Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. Once again, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. We're here for our first ever inclusion into the Star Wars podcast day. This is our little slice of life in the Star Wars universe here. So we welcomed Star Wars comic book writer, Marc Guggenheim to the podcast to chat all things Star Wars, but to focus on the book that he co-wrote with Jar Jar Binks himself, Ahmed Best, the upcoming Jar Jar comic book, which comes out February 11th at your local comic book shop. But Marc has a history. He's been writing comics for about 20 years now. He's also written TV and movie and all those different things in the DC and other universes as well. But he's also known for his work at Star Wars Yoda, Jedi Knights, which has recently just come out, and again, the upcoming Jar Jar comic that comes out with Ahmed Best. That's what we talked about this episode. So happy Star Wars Podcast Day. I hope everybody enjoys this episode. But before you do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those places. You can rate, review, subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can watch the video portion of this over on youtube.com, as well as visit Capes and Tights for so much more. Happy Star Wars Podcast Day to all you listeners and viewers out there. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with Marc Guggenheim, comic book writer. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Marc. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
How are you
and
doing?
You good. I mean, we actually were on like 100 and some episode, like a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And it was like one of those things where I'm like, I always wanted to have you on, had you on, and then I was like, oh, we'll get Marc on at some other point in the future, and it just got crazy.
Happened. Yeah.
And there's been so many things that come out. I've wanted to talk to you about in any life. There's so many things, comics. There's so many things, but. We're here now. You're busy. You took time out of your schedule to talk to us, so we'll make this painless and easy. But we'll talk Star Wars today. I mean, this is a Star Wars podcast day, our first time doing it. So I'm excited to have you on as a prolific comic book writer of Star Wars legends. But let's just go back a little bit. Let's talk. Do you remember? I mean, obviously you were what, like 7 or 8 years old. I'm not going to put your age out there, but I'm going to say somewhere between the ages of 5 and 10 when the first Star Wars film hit theaters.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Is that how far back you go, or is this something that came up? Okay. Do you have an early memory?
I mean, it's so vivid. I'm the oldest of three, and my dad took me and my brother Eric we thought we were going to go see a movie called The Bad News Bears. Which is about this ragtag group of kids playing baseball. And we sit in the theater. Actually, I still remember exactly like which theater and where in the theater we were sitting. We were sitting on the right side of the aisle, like close to the aisle. And the John Williams score comes on, and there's these huge yellow letters, and then suddenly a Star Destroyer is flying over my head, and I'm like, this is not the Bad News Bears. And I honestly, like, I think at this point it's cliche to say it, but it happens to be the truth. Like, I was profoundly changed. Like I saw that movie a million times. My brother Eric and I we once went to go see it. We knew that we were going to be late. Like we came in during the cantina sequence. We didn't care. We just wanted to see it again. Didn't matter to us. So yeah, it's always had like a really profound impact on my life.
That's awesome to hear. See, the funny thing is, I was born in '86, so I was a little bit late to that. But also, my parents were like into movies and things, but like they weren't like I've heard stories where I was like, I want to be that parent. My child is 5, my son's 5, and my daughter's 2, and I want to have those experiences. And I kind of did recently. We watched Back to the Future. My son was like ecstatic about it, and I was like, oh, hopefully this is like a transformative moment in his life that he always looks back to. We watched like the 3 Back to the Future movies in one weekend. Awesome. But I just love hearing people's stories about how like we went and saw it in the theaters and so on and so forth. And I just recently rewatching X-Files. And there's an episode where a guy with the guy with a pigtail impregnates a bunch of women, and one of them he pretends like he's Luke Skywalker, and I just laughed. The woman is in the bed, she's had the baby, and they're talking to her, and she's like, "How many times have you seen Star Wars?" And she's like, 368 times. And I'm like, I want that to be my son at some point where he's like,
Yeah,
I've watched
yeah.
this so many times. It's just cool to hear. And I'm guessing, Mark, thinking about those moments and the transformative part of your childhood this was, and now be able to like create these stories must be some sort of pinch.
It's
I mean, you live a pretty good
it's weird.
storytelling life. Like you have some pretty good
Okay.
characters you've
Yeah.
told stories, but like it must be a pinch me moment still to be able
Oh
to
my
like
God.
make these
Totally.
moments. Yeah.
I always actually like from very early on in my writing career, like it's been a pinch me moment. It's a great way of putting it. And I promised myself very early on that I would never let it not be. I never wanted to allow myself to get to the place where I was so jaded that it just became work. I like to say like I work for 10-year-old me. And 10-year-old me is like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like
Exactly.
you write all this stuff. Yeah, I'm just unbelievably fortunate. And it's a constant pinch. It's honestly like, I will tell you, especially when it comes to comics, like no one does comic books for the money.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert, there's no money in comic books. So you really do it for the love of the game. And yeah, you do it for the pinch me moment of it
Mhm.
all.
It's funny how you say that. I just talked to someone this morning on an episode, and they mentioned that they made the fifth issue of their creative owned series, and they're like, the fifth issue. I probably lost money on the fifth issue, but I needed to
Okay.
tell it. I wanted to tell it, and
Yeah.
I got to do this. And he goes, if I have to start doing DoorDash, I'm still going to write comics and draw
Yeah.
comics, but I need to tell these stories somehow. And I think that's how most comic creators out there are. They want to tell these
Oh,
stories, and they know they're not going to. You have to do other things. Mark, you're
oh,
you're doing
totally.
TV, you're doing film, you're doing other things to make it so that you can do comics as well.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's like there is a way to look at it, which, let's say, random people like my agents
Yeah.
look at like they look at it as the comic book work, like those hours could be spent writing things that are a lot more lucrative for me and quite frankly for them. And I instead I choose, to spend my time on comic books when I spend my time on comic books. But again, it's like I think it's such I hate the word privilege because it's just gotten so
Yeah.
like ridiculously overused. But like it is a real privilege to like do something that you love and I, I very early on in my career as a writer in television, I realized that I wouldn't or I shouldn't make any professional decisions based on money or lack thereof.
Yeah.
So I really do try to, make my choices based not on, money or practical things like that, but rather what really excites me. Like I said, I work for 10-year-old me.
Mhm. So that's the case too. Like, so you work for 10-year-old me, but like, how do you approach these stories? You've written Real to Write for Yoda. You've written for, Han Solo. I'm going to go on and on, but like now you got Jar Jar. How do you, as he's a fan of these things, obviously it makes it easier to write these things because you have some knowledge and things, so on and so forth. If someone's like, I'll give you a bucket full of money to write this story about a character you know nothing about, you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you mentioned don't do it for the money, but in the same sense, you're like, well, I could pay a bunch of bills. Let me figure it out. Obviously, you have some knowledge going into this. Does that approach change? Like, does it change what you do for creating these stories, or like
Hmm.
being a lifelong fan of it? Also, like, I don't want to screw this up for people. Like,
There's definitely there's a lot of I mean I'm a neurotic writer
yeah,
so there's a lot of like little neuroses that go through me like I don't want to screw this up for people. There's also the like I don't want this to be fan fiction.
mm,
Like, I've got to maintain a certain professional distance from it because not that there's anything wrong with fan fiction,
yes,
but by definition, no one gets paid to write fan fiction. I
mm,
mean, I am getting paid, the
mm,
the Marvel, Disney, Lucasfilm, corporation is paying me money,
yeah,
and I want to make sure that I'm being a professional about it. So it's like I've got to sort of like figure out whenever I sit down to do something like a Star Wars comic, I have to figure out how to sort of like weaponize my
mm,
fandom, and utilize my fandom, but not be so consumed by it that I stop, telling the story that I'm trying to tell, as a writer, as a professional writer. So it's you're sort of trying to thread a certain needle. But my approach and my process is pretty much always the same. That being said, like it varies only insofar as like sometimes I'm hired, we'll stay with Star Wars, but this is true for pretty much everything
Yeah.
else. Like there's sometimes where I'm like hired, tell a very specific kind of story, like with the Yoda issues I wrote. That was like there was a very I was part of a larger, 10-part story that Kevin Scott had come up with. And I wanted to make sure that like I was, doing my part again, trying to be professional.
Mhm.
There's other times like where it's like, do a Han Solo comic or do a Jedi Knights comic where, there isn't as much, sort of a prerequisite or as much of a bullseye that I'm trying to hit. And I would say in both cases, though, no matter how much I start off with in terms of guidance or a mandate from Lucasfilm, at the end of the day, it's the same thing as it is with everything else I write. It's me sitting down, writing longhand notes to myself, kind of daydreaming on paper.
Mhm.
That's sort of where I start. Regardless of what it is I'm doing.
Uh, and I know, and writing any intellectual property is in something like Marvel or DC, you've always had this like there's backstory. However, if you write a comic book about Abomination, there's so
Uh-huh.
many different versions of Abomination. There's so many different storylines. There's so many different resets in number ones and whatever it may be. And I don't know why I use Abomination as one of these characters,
Yeah.
but there is. However, Star Wars, there's canon.
Yes, there's
Like
these
there's just
are
like
yes.
everything affects everything, and there never really has been this. I mean, there's like Star Wars visions and things like that where
Sure.
there are like some like alternate universe kind of like stuff, but like most of the stuff, I would say 99% of the stuff, TV shows, movies, and comics and books are canon. And so
Yes.
that's where I think I would assume it differs from writing Green Arrow or whatever it may be
Yes.
because of that fact that
Yeah.
there's like you mentioned the Kevin Scott story, you're
Yes.
affecting a lot of other things. If you write Yoda
Yeah.
doing something, then that person,
I
if for some reason you create a new power for Yoda, for some odd reation, that person has to be like later on when they use that
yeah.
character, it has to be done that
Yeah.
way. So I'm guessing there's no reset. So whatever you do, it's in canon now.
I'll tell you a funny Yoda related story because I basically screwed up Cavan's story. I completely screwed up the ending. What happened was originally the Yoda series that Cavan had written and outlined
Yeah.
was going to end with Luke arriving on Dagobah. And it was in like the 10th issue, the 10th final issue was going to be like the minutes leading up to that moment. And I had like a weird like thing where I'm like, do I say anything about
Mhm.
this? And I decided not to. I decided, you know what, it's not my place to raise this thing that I'm about to tell you. But someone in story group, Lucasfilm has this story group, and they know more about they've forgotten more about Star Wars than I'll ever know, and I think I've got some game in this department. Anyway, someone in the story group sort of raised their hand and said, we actually did an 8-page story in Age of Rebellion about the moments leading up to Luke arriving on Dagobah. Just so happened I was the person who wrote that story. And I'm just sort of sitting there going like, yeah, I figured if it was an issue, people would raise their hand, and that's what happened. But yeah, it's like, it's funny. Yes, everything you write because it is canon, like affects everything that came before and since, and even affects the things that haven't been written yet.
Mm.
And I will say though, like you, you kind of, it's not that complicated,
Mhm.
really. I think in your bones sort of where the no-fly areas are, and you know in your bones the stuff that if it were to be canon, it would screw things up too much, So 9.9 times out of 10, if I've written something that Lucasfilm doesn't approve of, it's because, again, they've forgotten more about Star Wars than I'll ever know.
Yeah.
And it's like, and in this, in canon novelization on, page 130 in the third paragraph on, there was this, established, stuff, very, very, sort of very specific inside baseball stuff. So, I think you kind of know. It's a little bit like working with intellectual property like Star Wars, but any of these sort of work for hire
Mm.
gigs. I sort of liken it to it's like being a guest in someone's home.
Mm.
You kind of, no one needs to tell you, like, don't, tread, dirt into
Yeah.
the living room. Like no one needs to tell you to, like, close your mouth when you're chewing. Just there's just good manners. And yes, every now and again there's this weird thing, but generally speaking, it's not rocket science. It's like just having a certain amount of empathy and a certain amount of understanding that you're, basically, I'll now switch metaphor. It's like renting someone's car.
Mhm.
You've got to just, be smart about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've seen in the past where people have created a dog or some sort of random ancillary character or thing. It's more in like the Star Wars Adventures or like
Yeah,
these like longer stories that have like big, large, ensemble casts to it, and lot
yeah,
less of it happening in Yoda or in specific the Star Wars main, storyline or something like that. And so
yeah.
like that, I could see where like because I've talked to like Alyssa Wong
Mhm.
and how they created some of the small things that are funny
Yeah,
to them that later on this might be something and it's just pretty crazy and that to me is like the second pinch me moment. It's like where there's like this like you now created something like you've created canon, you've created
yeah.
lore, you've created
Well,
this thing where now no one can say anything about the Star Wars universe and not at some point like some sort of historian can't
yeah.
mention cannot go without mentioning Marc Guggenheim. Like it's like now you're in this.
Well, that's
You know what I
very
mean?
nice.
Like
A nice way to think about it,
but
for
I'm saying
sure.
it's not like you're gonna be like, oh, George Lucas and Mark Guggenheim. But my
No,
point would be is like anybody who's been able to go in there and touch a comic book or a book or a TV show or something and worked on it now has to be part of that history of it. And it's
yeah.
Marvel's like that in DC, but those are so much bigger and so much
It's so
more
much, and
like
a canon that's a little
it's
diffuse in
funky.
terms
It's
of
yeah,
what's canon,
yeah.
what counts,
And someone like
Um,
I even talked to like Chris Condon about like Ultimate Wolverine, and
yeah,
he's like the new Ultimate. He's like, I got to create this, but like people might be mad at me and for the rest of history because I screwed with Wolverine, even though he's in an alternate universe. It's still
welcome to
to the
my world,
point.
Chris.
Yeah, it's like this like thing, and like I said, he goes, I got to play with Wolverine, but like yes, I'll be attached to Wolverine, but it's not like the same. And I think it's weird about this, and I'm gonna compare this, and it's kind of a weird podcast to talk about it, but Star Trek's similar. I mean, people can create
Oh,
things in
totally.
Star Trek. There's
Yeah,
these, but these fandoms are also very finicky. Like they're very, and I'm speaking this on a podcast about Star Wars, and they're very anal about their characters, and it's so funny to me because that's why I loved starting this episode off with you
yeah.
talking about your fandom and you're remembering that you're a fan of this, and it's like you can do no right.
Well,
Like to
I will
me,
say that's the weird. It's funny. Like my relationship with fandom, I guess like any other writers is complex.
Mhm.
And also like, I've been writing professionally for 25 years. I probably, I broke into comic books about 20 years ago. So for 20 years, I've been, interacting with fans. And I've had some great experiences. I've had some less than great experiences. But where I've come about, having matured myself is that it is sort of, is really comes down to on Arrow, we used to say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. And I've come around to the feeling that some people, not all fans, I don't even think even a large segment of fans, but there's a percentage of fans for as small as that percentage is disproportionately loud. And those fans, this is how they interact
Mhm.
with art. The way they interact, unfortunately, through anger,
Mhm.
like that's how they engage. Um, and it probably has to do with how things worked in their family. It's like, oh, the more angry you are, the more passionate you are, blah, 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 blah. Like whatever it is. And once I sort of realized that, oh, it's just, these are just, this is just the way they experience and express their fandom, it made it a lot easier. At the same time, it's very it's weird. It used to depress me, but now I just think it's so strange. It's like you're gonna tell me I'm not a fan of this stuff?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I don't take second position in my fandom of the things I love. Like, you know, I I am like one of the biggest Star Wars fans around. Like you're not gonna tell me that I'm not. You can say you're a bigger fan than me, but you can't say
Yes.
I'm not a fan. You know, and that goes for the X-Men or Green
Yeah.
Arrow or Black Canary or any of the characters that I've written and I actually haven't. The funny thing is, I don't know, maybe I'm doing something right or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I haven't experienced, at least to my knowledge, any issue from fandom with my Star Wars work.
Mhm.
And that's the
We,
other thing. There's different fandoms. Like, and now
yes.
Star Wars, like there's a toxic element in unfortunately in Star Wars. But I've been very lucky that for whatever reason, I haven't. I either am ignorant of it, or it's something I've managed to avoid. I mean, when I say ignorant of it, I've been off of Twitter for about a year now. So who the hell knows what's happening on Twitter, as far as my Star Wars and my Star Wars writing is concerned.
Well, I mean, it's also this. It's the age we're in where people can just say whatever the hell they want to say on the internet and
Sure.
no repercussion to it. But I mean, having thick skin. I mean, you deal with intellectual property and
Yeah.
work for hire on a bunch of stuff, whether it's TV or comics and or movies. And you obviously have to have some sort of a thick skin to be out there in the public and
Oh,
so on and so forth. I'll tell you right now, we are huge here at the podcast. Here, we are a huge fan of the Green Lantern movie. So
oh,
there's
you're the
that.
one.
So that's
No,
it.
thank you. No,
And
thank you. I appreciate that. I do.
and so we discussed it once because we do these like obscure movie reviews of like movie reviews that you wouldn't typically see people do, and we're like this is like I think it had a time issue where other movies were around it were so much like so good that some
Yeah.
people were like taking that and comparing and all that stuff. It's a very
Yeah.
timing of a thing, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to have thick skin, and so I think you had to have thick skin and to take on a comic book like Jar Jar. I mean, I think that's a character that's a very polarizing character for a lot of people. I'm a fan. I think we got a little Jar Jar somewhere up here. We got a little character of Jar Jar. I'm a huge fan of Jar Jar, honestly. Not like a diehard, oh my gosh, everything's Jar Jar
Yeah.
kind of fan, but like I never had a particular issue with Jar Jar Binks. Like never really had like a why do people hate this character so much kind of thing. And so like entering this film, this is not the first time you've written Jar Jar technically either, right? I mean,
No,
you did it
no,
in
actually, it,
2019, was it?
yeah,
Was it?
yes, it was 2019. It was actually my very first Star Wars story.
Okay.
So there's a real in doing this Jar Jar special with Ahmed Best. There's a real sense of coming home. There's a real sense of full circle. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, quite frankly, was there's this wonderful sense of symmetry
Mm,
involved. But also like I really wanted to work with Ahmed. I wanted because I you know. Say what you want about the character of Jar Jar. The way Ahmed was targeted,
yes.
and blamed and just vilified was always struck me as just so horrible,
Hmm.
and so terrible. And he's such a smart, classy guy. He didn't deserve not. I don't know if anyone really deserves it, but he
But yes.
certainly didn't deserve it. And the chance to like sort of really the way my I see my role in this book is like helping Ahmed do his version of Jar Jar,
Hmm.
and we also just as a bonus also have his version of Keller and Beck as well, so which is the other role that
Yes.
Ahmed had originated in the Star Wars universe. Anyway, I sort of really saw myself and see myself as a facilitator. And the reason to do it is so that Ahmed, someone who, has really suffered all the slings and arrows one can suffer for the portrayal of a character, to give him his chance, to help him, take his chance of interpreting this character again in a different medium. Like I feel like I just felt like that was really important. I was super glad that this was something that Ahmed had the opportunity to do, as well as like he came to the project with a lot of really great ideas. I mean, we're basically telling the story that he really wanted to tell, and it was super super smart. And it's the kind of story that I think only someone who spent several decades thinking about a character can really come up with. So I'm really excited. Like, and I think people. Sorry, I know I'm going on.
No, you're
I
good.
think people are going to be very surprised at just how much heavy lifting this 25-page issue does. Not just for the character of Jar Jar, but honestly, like for the backstory of the rebellion,
Mhm.
for the interconnectivity with the Star Wars saga in general. It's really kind of cool. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. And I've always assumed, like, I'm from New England, live in Maine. I've been a Boston Red Sox fan my entire life, and I've always, Buckner with the ball going under his
Sure.
legs, and that's obviously a mistake that he made. This is not like,
Yes.
it's not
Yes.
like Ahmed Mess made him. If people would say the only mistake that he would be of accepting the role of Jar Jar
Yeah.
Binks, but like who
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
not do that? Like I'm like anybody out there who makes fun of Jar Jar Binks got the opportunity to play Jar Jar Binks in that movie originally
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
said yes. So don't like that's
Right.
always my thing. And so like
Yeah.
and then when that day that after the Red Sox won the World Series for the first, and he
Yeah.
got Buckner was there, and the fans cheered him and all that stuff, and so on and so forth. And I was like, seeing that and the more acceptance of Ahmed Best in Star
Yeah.
Wars culture nowadays, and like it coming around a little bit on people, and really seeing years and years and years after those movies came out that it was not really Ahmed's fault. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like this is how you should play the character. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna listen to what I'm doing. Like I don't like I never understood that aspect of it. But to see him now, and I'm a big fan of people who cross over into other
Yeah.
mediums. So like seeing
Yeah.
Ahmed be able to write the character that he actually played on screen or not screen, CGI, and again. Obviously, he played other character too. Like,
Yeah.
you get to see
Kelley.
this in Keller and Beck. But like, I don't know. I just saw that, and I saw. First of all, I'm a fan of your writing in general, and I'm a
Okay.
fan of your Star Wars writing, and so that was the first draw. But then I'm like, Ahmed Best is part of this. Like, you can't miss this now. Like, this is one of those things where I'm like, can't miss Star Wars here because of that. But I also feel like, I mean, Jar Jar's been in other comics. He's not in a ton of
Yeah.
comics, but he's
Yeah.
been in other comics, and not just adaptations of the Phantom
Yeah.
Menace, or he's been in actual stories. And that
Yeah.
your special from 2019, I was in that. He's been in Star Wars Adventures and other things too. But to get his own comic book, like to get to the point where now Jar Jar has a title on a
It's
comic
kind of
book,
cool. It's
it's
very cool.
awesome. I think it's
Yeah.
so cool to see. And it's not, you would have seen this potentially in the early 2000s when the movie was out to kind of be like, we're going to try to, milk everything this is for. But like to see this many years later, to see, hey, Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney and Marvel are going to put out this comic. I mean, that must have been so cool. So I mean, obviously you've written, Keller and Beck's been in Jedi Knights. Is that correct?
He was in
And
issue 8.
so
Um,
and then you have obviously you've written Jar Jar before, but like in Ahmed Best, but like how did you connect to this? Like, is that because of the connectivity in Star Wars that you were part of this, or how did Mark be part of this?
that's a great question.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they picked me to work with Ahmed. I think I hope it has
you
to do with
always
the
question
writing.
yourself that, right? You're like, oh,
But
why do they pick me? No.
I never know. It's always honestly every time I get one of those incoming emails from Marvel, it's like, did someone who made a mistake? How many people said no
How many people
before we
said no?
got?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Um, but I think, I think it was, I think it was, I don't want to speak for Marvel, but I
Yeah.
think it was a combination of several things. I had just written Kellerin. I
Mhm.
had started off my Star Wars, writing with Jar Jar. And because of my Hollywood stuff, I'm used to working with actors.
Mhm.
And I just like jumped at it. Like, again, I love I love the character of Jar Jar. It felt like coming home to me. I can't imagine someone asking me to write Star Wars of any stripe and me saying no. Um, and finally, like the opportunity to, work with Ahmad and be part of this, be part of this, like, like I said, his version of
Mhm.
Jar Jar, like, was incredibly exciting to me.
It's just cool to see that, and I think that it makes sense. I mean, obviously, you work with actors
Yeah.
and people in that realm and stuff like that too. But yeah, it was cool to see that. Like I said, the Jar Jar part of this is just so cool to see, and I'm so excited like that people are going to read this issue about a character
Yeah.
that again, it's some reason like I never understood it. Do you have any idea? Like I know you talked a little bit like why Jar Jar has been like why
Oh,
the
why,
character
why,
itself.
why?
Is
why people don't like Jar Jar?
yeah, like, do you have
Um,
any idea? I mean, I was like I said, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I have the mentality of that I got from Kevin Smith, who at one point said on a podcast episode that he doesn't give a crap if the movies are good or bad or any of these Marvel, DC, anything. They're still making them. Like,
yes,
why we
yes,
should be happy that they're
I
making them,
know.
good, bad, or ugly. We are thankful that we can go to the movie theater now and see a
Yes,
movie or a TV show or whatever it may
yes.
be, Star Wars or Marvel, whatever. So that's maybe the mentality I get that like you really can do no wrong, even if a character's not the best. I'm not going to villainize it. It's I don't know. What do you
I
think it is?
I have this theory. So, you know, I saw Star Wars when I was between 5 and 10 years old, as you
Hmm.
said. And George Lucas had always maintained that these movies are for kids.
Hmm.
The problem with the prequel trilogy was that he George made it for kids, but all the people buying tickets and all the fans and all the people who were so excited were not kids. They grew up from the original
Hmm.
trilogy and they became adults. And then they go to the movie, go see Phantom Menace, and there's this, comic relief, slapsticky character with a funny voice and a funny way of talking that I think is very appealing to kids, but is less appealing to the fans who grew up.
Hmm.
And so I think that was a piece of it. I think again the fans and who saw Phantom Menace, the fans of the original trilogy who saw Phantom Menace were really disappointed by Phantom Menace, and they I think they just sort of like located their disappointment in Jar Jar. Like, it wasn't just enough to not like the movie. They had to like dislike a specific character in the movie. And Jar Jar just became that unfortunate target, is my
It's also
documentation.
doesn't help that people were bitching about the CGI and the character is CGI, so that probably
Yeah.
didn't help it at all either. I mean, like,
No.
although a practical effect version of Jar Jar might have not looked as good in
Yeah.
that sense,
I
like
also think,
it's possible.
you know,
But go ahead.
Jar Jar was cutting edge,
Hmm.
I mean that was I want to say Jar Jar was the first fully digital speaking character. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure if he's not the first, he's certainly like the
So
second,
up there, yeah, yeah. But I
he's
mean,
certainly up there,
it's
you
it's
know.
one of those things. I think that like again, if you this podcast is actually a fan of those movies. I'm a fan of all the Star Wars movies. There's obviously levels of how much I like them, but
Me
like
too.
I never had a problem as much as some people do with those the original trilogy or sorry the prequel trilogy I should say is that maybe they same thing with me. There's nothing really that bad about this movie, but I'm supposed to not like it. So where can I find that? And I
Right.
found that in
Where
Jar
can
Jar
I,
Binks,
yeah,
and then for
and how
some
do I
reason I'm going to take it
justify?
out on the actor that played it too. I just that
Justify.
sounds like a good idea. It sounds like
Yeah,
strong, great morals in that sense. But yeah, it was always kind of
yeah,
funny to me. I just never understood it. I feel like he was a likable character. He was helpful. He obviously made some mistakes and things like that. But I feel like that's how this storyline progressed in this point. Like it's one of those things that if you take certain things out, how good would have that movie have been if he wasn't there, kind of thing. They had to go to certain places because of Jar Jar. So there's just these things that I never understood that aspect of it. And so seeing a comic book based on Jar Jar was really cool. And seeing Ahmed again, to reiterate that, seeing Ahmed attached to it as well is pretty cool. And I'm guessing, I mean, you guys obviously work together. Ahmed's never read a comic book before, so this is obviously helpful where you could come into the play too. Is that where it was like bouncing ideas back off of each other? And were you the main scripter? Like, were you writing the actual script for it, or was Ahmed
no,
there? Okay.
actually, that was the best part that I
Oh,
wasn't. So,
really?
so the way we started off was, it was just me and Ahmed, on a Zoom together, talking about, his different ideas.
Mm.
And I would just sort of like, kind of like if we were in a writer's room together, I'd sort of weigh in and be like, okay, here's how I think we can get these different pieces to fit together. And then we got on a Zoom with Lucasfilm, further refine the idea. And then, we just wrote up like a short, like there was like a 2-page synopsis, like sort of pitch. That got further refined. And then for the actual scripting, I told Ahmed, I want it to work however he wanted to work.
Mm.
And he's like, well, he's like, I really do want to like write this with you. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I mean, it wasn't like me being the scripter at all. Basically what I did was I took our synopsis and I wrote up sort of like a script um, outline hybrid, where there were some scenes that I just wrote, and then there's other scenes where I said this I think would like like obviously like a lot. It's the whole book is Jar Jar and Kelleran, so and Ahmed wrote at least a half of it. But there were certain scenes I just felt like the scenes that were closest to those original ideas that Ahmed came to the table with. Those were the ones I was like, okay, I think we'll have X number of pages for this scene. You write that, and
Mm.
X number of pages for that scene. You write that, and because we both knew the story, he knew what had to happen in each scene. And I also said like, look, if you need less pages or more pages, that's fine. I'll do the comic book thing and move stuff around. And similarly, I was like, just write the scenes as if it was a movie. Like don't worry about the panels and the camera angles and all that stuff. Like just write the scene, as if you were performing it.
Mm.
And then I just sort of translated into comic bookese. And and in doing so, like I would do a pass on his stuff and he did a pass on my stuff. So there's, like I mean, he really like he did some great things to my scenes. Like he added like just like really clever turns of phrase, or like there's a cute little character moment between Kelleran and a new character that was also that character was Ahmed's idea. So like it was a true collaboration in the sense that we're both writing an equal amount and we're rewriting each other's material. So hopefully, I mean, my goal apart from just producing a good comic book was I didn't want anyone to be able to read this and go, oh, that's the stuff that Guggenheim wrote. That's the stuff that Ahmed wrote. Like
Mhm.
it should, when you write something with somebody, it should feel like the duo did it.
Mhm.
And hopefully it feels that way. Hope it should be the collaboration should be invisible.
That would which would be great, and it's very rare does a does a comic book writer have the ability to actually talk to the character that you're writing about.
It's
Like
so
like
interesting, right? I know. Twice
like
over.
I was just thinking to myself like it's like, oh yeah, if you wrote a Green Arrow and like and Stephen
I'm
Amell was
writing it
there,
with
like
Green Arrow.
yeah
Yes,
yeah
exactly. It's like
it's so like
writing a comic book with Oliver Queen would be a really
which
surreal,
be
interesting
writing with
experience.
Jar Jar. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy to see that connection and the teamwork or the collaboration is really cool and and I said letting, but like I could see someone who's like, I write comics to be like, I'm gonna do this, you give me the ideas, but like see the collaboration between it and see how the final product will come out. But like it's also is it Laura Braga is the
Uh-huh.
artist on most of this book, and then there's a
Kieran.
cover artist Tieran
Well,
Clark
yeah,
is the
Tori
cover
Clark
artist,
did the
and
cover,
Kieran
and,
McCowan,
and Kieran is also co-artist with Laura.
co-artist.
And I mean, I think they did an absolutely outstanding job.
Mhm.
First of all, I think it's very difficult for two artists to collaborate on
Yeah.
a comic. It's a lot easier if you're two writers on a comic book.
Mhm.
And just the way their art sort of talks to each other. As I was, I did several passes of the lettering, for this issue, and like the difference between the artists, even though their styles are very different, like it sort of for me it fell away, and I
Mhm.
was sort of sucked into the story and the way they were visualizing it. And Torin is amazing. He had done all the covers of my Beware the Planet of the Apes series, as
Mhm.
well as all the lightsaber variants for the Jedi Knight series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love his stuff. It's always fun to work with him.
But there's also as a cover B, it's Dave Watcher variant too, which is
Yes,
pretty badass as well because it's got
totally badass.
the cover A is awesome too, but like that has just Jar Jar on it.
Yeah,
But Keller and Beck is on the Dave Watcher cover too of both of
correct.
them, which is pretty badass. And then there's a Black History
Yes,
month connecting variant,
also
which is
by
pretty
Torin.
badass. Yeah, which is also by
Yeah.
drawing, yeah, which is pretty badass. But like that Dave Watcher cover, like I'm a cover A kind of guy. Like
Uh-huh.
that's what the intended cover was for.
Yes,
Like
me too. Me
I
too.
want that. I'm like, if I ever buy a comic that I buy a variant, it's by cover A and the
Yeah,
variant because I want the cover A, the B or whatever.
me too.
And so that's huge to me. But like that cover of a Dave Watcher is a phenomenal artist as well. But like just
He is
that
terrific, but
having both,
it's a great cover.
Having
It,
both
it
characters
feels
on that's
like,
cool.
it feels like cover A1. It doesn't quite
Yes.
feel like a B cover.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing against B covers. I love them, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, it's and actually like I've just also noticed that in a lot of the promotional materials about the book, David's cover gets as much play
Yes.
and exposure as Torrance, which I think is wonderful.
It's usually kind of weird because like we set it up on our website. We do the reviews of things. We also do like these are our featured four comics of the week or so on and so forth. And for next Wednesday, or will come out this weekend. But for next Wednesday, Jar Jar is one of the featured comics of the week. And a lot of times, if it's we'll use like the B cover as
Yeah,
part of the imagery so that the both articles don't have the same
oh, smart.
imagery in it. And
Yeah,
so a lot of times the review will get cover A, but then the
ah,
promotion for it will get cover B or
clever.
C or whatever it may be. And so that's kind of cool. And that's where I found out about that Dave Watcher cover, which is pretty badass. And we talked about Jar Jar for a little bit here, and we're gonna get ready to finish up here pretty soon. But we didn't actually talk about what it was fully about. I don't think so. Like, what would you explain this comic book about Jar Jar or featuring Jar Jar to be about?
Yeah, it's funny. I have to figure out how to reduce it down to a non-spoilery elevator
Yes.
pitch.
Well, I mean, the solicitation is like 3 words. It's like the
Yeah,
weirdest
it's
thing. I don't know.
very
It's very it's small, but yeah.
yeah, and I think I did the first draft of the
Okay.
solicitation.
Yeah.
So I've been very coy about this. So I guess I would say is in the wake of Jar Jar being the one responsible for Palpatine having emergency powers as a result of spoiler alert, episode two. Um, as a result of that, Jar Jar is brought to a planet by Keller and Beck,
Mhm.
and kind of uncovers something that is go really there's two elements. This is where again where I have to get quiet. There's two elements that are become important pieces of the foundation of the rebellion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm being so coy about it.
That's good.
You know,
It's I'm glad because it's also one of those things that if I've talked to people like about comics and they're like, yeah, whatever, people aren't gonna care. I'm like, no, there's a thing about like first of all, you have to like you have certain rules and regulations you have to follow for Lucasfilms, but also like I don't want to spoil this for people. Like read the comic. How about that? It's featuring Jar Jar and Keller and Breck, and it's including Mark and Ahmed and Laura and Kieran. But like,
yeah,
just
it's
read
a
it.
fun read. I mean, it's designed to be a fun read. I think the thing, what excited me the most about Ahmed's ideas was, oh, we have a chance to not just do a fun Jar Jar comic, which
Mhm.
is really all anyone's expecting, I think, of us. We have a chance to do a Jar Jar comic that feels like, for lack of a better word, it matters.
Mhm.
Like, I hope people read this and go, oh wow, that feels like a bigger building block in the Star Wars universe than I expected.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that truth is that's really for me a metaphor for the whole character. This is a character no one takes seriously, no one expects a lot out of. But when you do something really cool with him, it's a very pleasant surprise.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my hope is that the issue is a lot like the character himself.
And it's hits shelves February 11th at your local comic book shop. So make sure you grab that. You also be able to you can get a digital or whatever you need to get on there too, which is pretty cool. And so we're excited for that. As I said, I'm excited. I'm excited for more Star Wars. I mean, is Jedi Knights 10 issues? Is that done or is that
Yeah,
more?
10 issues in. No,
Okay.
unfortunately, we're done at 10, like
Okay.
most Marvel series
Yes.
these days. I have to say, like, that was such a wonderful experience for
Mhm.
me. To work with Madabek Musabekov, to have, 10 issues with the entire same creative team, is so unbelievably rare in comics these days. I really love telling these done in one stories. I'm like,
Mhm.
ooh, I want to figure out a way to do more comic books like that. I really, really enjoyed that challenge. Yeah, I'm super proud of those 10 issues. I hope one day Marvel publishes it in a single trade.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
That's
them
really
do
cool.
that for a lot of their 10 issue series, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So Marvel, if you're listening,
Well,
Um,
I literally the same creator I was talking was Kyle Starks. I was talking to earlier today, and he was mentioning the idea that we had this little like tangent about how I don't feel like everybody's on the same page with trade paperbacks and hardcover. Like they just don't. There's certain things that we're just like we don't understand. Like his Peacemaker trade paperback comes out February, but the TV show second season came out in October. It seems like it may would have made more sense to do it in October. And so this whole thing, we're like, it's. I don't think that they're all communicating in well ways, but yeah, it's a
speaking as someone who had a live action comic book show and was always trying to sort of get better coordination between the studio and publishing,
yeah.
hard to do.
Well, I
Not
brought
easy.
it up when that.
No matter which organization you're dealing
Yeah,
with.
yes, exactly. I brought it up. There was this TV show on TV, and a young girl, she must have been 8 or 9 years old, came into the local comic book shop, Galactic Comics, and said, "Hey, I want a book featuring this character." And the character shows on TV, and they didn't have any in stock, and they went into the system to order it, and there were none in print, and it was the weirdest thing. And it was like now this 8, 9 year old could have been hooked on comics for the rest of their lives because
Yes,
they saw
no,
the TV show, and now they're not actually get this thing. So it's one of those things that like I remember back in the day when you made a Transformer cartoon to sell the toys. So I never
yeah,
understood why if you're making TV shows, why are there not you know in a world that if any lifetime and any lifetime came out as a feature film and it had a different poster, in all likelihood you get
yes,
another print of this with that poster on it
of
to
course you
help.
would.
It's
Exactly
like
right.
it's just how it
Exactly.
works. So I said maybe
Yeah.
not like that working that way in trades. Like if they made a Jedi Knights movie about your thing, maybe there's like a poster that comes in like a shrink wrap to the thing so I can try to promote it. But if you take the poster off, it's the actual trade cover or something. But something along those lines to help promote it. But that's a whole nother episode about like how we don't
Tell me
know
about
sometimes what's
it.
going on. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. So Jedi Knights is wrapping up. I mean, I'm guessing you haven't been kicked out of the Star Wars universe yet
No, no,
in
not
Marvel,
yet,
and
not yet.
not yet. So
I
so
keep
hoping it's
trying. I keep waiting for them to do it, but no, not yet. In fact, last week I saw Mike Siglain, head of Lucasfilm Publishing,
okay.
and Mark Paniccia, the Star Wars editor. Like we're always talking. We're definitely like we're talking about stuff.
Yes,
Let's put it that
yes, yes,
way.
yes. And you got obviously you got Marvel stuff and DC stuff and all
For
this. So
sure.
you've been working on some stuff, which is great. I'm my favorite comic book that you've ever written is Last Flight Out, and
Oh, thank
so
you.
I'm
Appreciate
like
that.
eagerly waiting what's next for that. I know it's
Yeah.
there was news in October about adaptation and things like
Yeah.
that, so I'm looking forward to that. Whatever comes with that. It's like I don't know. It was something about it. I picked up one day and I read it, and it was just. I was hooked forever and
I
ever and
really
ever, and
appreciate
so
that.
yeah, it's so amazing. I'm a big fan of everything you do, so don't go anywhere. Please don't go anywhere.
No, I'm not. I'm still doing my thing.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So Star Wars is a massive part of your life, which is really quite cool, and you get to continue doing that as an adult. You
Yeah.
get to play in these things, and I mean, I'm lucky enough. I feel like when people talk to you, like, how much money do you make on the podcast? I'm like, you don't understand how this works.
Yes. Yes.
But the lucky thing I get is to talk to people like yourself. Like that's I used to write sports too, and
Hmm.
in sports it was like what are you making off this? I'm like, I'm spending more money every weekend going to these sports games than I am making. And it's because I got
Right,
to
right.
talk to these professional athletes and find out
Yeah.
about their games and then do the same thing nowadays with comics and movies and TV and all that stuff,
Yeah.
is to talk to you people about the things that you create. And it's just so much fun. And so Star Wars is a massive thing and a massive part of my life. And it's so cool to talk to some creators like yourself on a special day like podcast, Star Wars Podcast Day here, and about Jar Jar. I mean, who
Well,
talk to me 10
I,
years ago and tell me that there was a Star Wars comic book called Jar Jar. I would have thought you
you
were
know,
crazy.
it's hey, you mentioned something that like, gave me a bit of hope,
Yeah.
which is in such short supply these days. You mentioned like Bill Buckner and
Yeah.
how and I will say like humanity sucks, particularly lately. But I think the one good quality we have is we have this tendency to, in a good way, like find grace over time,
Mhm.
and come to appreciate the people that we didn't originally appreciate more with time. And I think that's kind of wonderful, and I'm glad, thanks for reminding me about that because, it's, finding those shafts of sunlight are it's harder to these days.
Well, yeah, and you're right. And it's the best thing about something like Star Wars. I'm a big horror comic book fan. I'm a big horror fan in general. Is that some of those horrors that are being told nowadays are so adjacent to the actual horrors that we're living in our lives
Oh
that
my God,
sometimes it's hard to escape it. And
yeah.
we're a better place to escape the actual horrors that are going in our lives than go to a galaxy far, far away and read something about a fun character like Jar Jar and
Yeah.
know that this is not real, that I can
Yeah.
actually escape. I can live in another dimension, another world, another
Yeah.
universe, whatever it may be. But yeah, I've read so many books that are like, yeah, that's too real.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That is
know.
way too real. I mean, it's you got to suspend belief, but like, there's some things where I'm like reading about someone who's there's a book called Trad Wife about the people who are trad wives on the internet,
Oh,
and I'm just like, that's too like real.
yeah.
Like I see that on the
Yeah.
internet, where Jar Jar is like, okay, it's just this character that's
Pure
been created.
escapism.
It's
Pure
pure
escape.
escapism, and that's what's fun about it. Not saying I won't continue reading things that are based in real life, but like
Yeah, no, but
it's
I'm
just
right there with you. I'm right there with you. Like escapism, I
yes,
mean, that's what Star Wars always was. Even though, by the way,
Mhm.
Star Wars has a lot of social relevance.
It
George Lucas
does.
was, in the 70s, like after the Vietnam War, there's a lot of commentary about the Vietnam War. There's a lot of commentary, obviously, about fascism and authoritarianism. But Star Wars is at its heart an escapist fantasy. It is
Mhm.
it's literally described as a space fantasy.
Mhm.
And that's what it should always at least start out to be. And yes, can occasionally like touch on aspects of real life because that's also, again, part of Star Wars DNA.
But even that, it's like it's still in a galaxy far, far away. So it's like it's not
Yes.
Maine or
Yes.
California or Minnesota or wherever. It's
True
just
that.
it's not real, and so that's what's cool about it. And so thank you so much for spending
No,
Star
thank
Wars
you.
Podcast Day with me, Mark. It's so much fun to talk to you, and I don't want to wait this long again to talk about something in the future. How about that?
Well,
Does that sound
let's
good
hook
to
it
you?
up. Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Absolutely.
do it.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us here. And we'll get you on as soon as we can in the future. But yeah,
Cool.
thank you so much. And best of luck with the launch of Jar Jar and everything else that comes in the future and all the stuff you're working on right now.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.